Okay, so I was talking to my grandpa today, and my grandpa was born in like early 1940s in Memphis, Tennessee, and I always talk politics with him, right? My grandpa served over 20 years in the US Navy and then also worked over 20 years in the US prison system. But we were talking today, and like, I don't know, my eyes got like super watery. And I asked him, I was like, hey, did you vote? He's like, of course I voted. There was a time where I couldn't afford to vote. And I'm like, that is my grandpa. He remembers a time where he couldn't afford to vote. Someone who served our country couldn't afford to vote at one point. And I just think that that is perspective. I think that's perspective for us, that people who are still alive today, and he's a very sprightly 80-year-old man, still remembers the time where they couldn't afford to vote, that they couldn't vote, that the idea of the fact that we would have a person of color representing us was a pipe dream. And in my grandfather's lifetime, not only was he able to get his voting rights, he was also able to get civil rights. He was able to vote for Barack Obama. And then in 2024, he was able to vote for Kamala Harris. Do you guys understand like the gravity of that? From not being able to vote, to not being able to afford to vote, to then being able to live your life and vote for two people of color, people who look like you, people who represent you. I think that's wild. And I think that that gives perspective. And I think that people who choose not to vote are hands down the most ignorant group of individuals we have in the United States. There has been a time in history where a good portion of people who live here, American individuals, American citizens, were not able to vote, or their vote didn't count as much, or they couldn't afford to vote. So the fact that you get to sit here in 2024 and vote for free, all you have to do is register, and you choose not to do so when you're registered and you're able, is crazy to me. Because in a lifetime, not being able to vote, not being able to afford to vote, and then being able to vote for two people of color. It's wild. And then we have my grandmother, born in the 30s, from Japan, became a US citizen, being so passionate about politics in a way that you would not suspect someone whose English is their second language, never has worked a day in her life, and is so passionate about voting. If they can do it, we can do it. And I encourage every single one of you to remember this story when you go to the polls, that there has been a time in a lifetime where in which people had to pay to vote. They couldn't vote, and you have the power today to vote. So get the fuck out there and vote.